So let's start out with the visitor visa. Now I think today there are something like 180, 170 different nationalities that can arrive at the boundaries or at the airports of Hong Kong and will be admitted by an immigration officer upon an examination by an immigration officer as to their bona fides as visitors to Hong Kong. Now, depending on your nationality, you can get anywhere between a 7-day limit of stay or a 180-day limit of stay once that immigration officer at the border or at the boundary has examined you. It's more than likely that any national that has been afforded visa upon arrival privileges is going to be admitted. It's a very, very rare instance where such foreign nationals are turned away, usually because of security objections and a little bit of intelligence that perhaps this person is coming and he's deemed undesirable for Hong Kong. But of the tens of millions of visitors that present themselves for admission each year, it's a very small number that actually get denied. But there are certain nationalities who, in fact, can't secure entry as a visitor upon arrival, and they need to make an application for a visa prior to arrive. What I'm going to teach you now also relates to those visa nationals that are afforded visa upon arrival privileges, but they may not be happy, for example, with the 2-week limit of stay that they're normally availed. If they do get a 2-week limit of stay, they may want to come here for a longer period of stay, wanting to do something that is keeping them here quite properly for more than that time that they're normally afforded. In which case you can make an application for a visitor visa before they arrive, seeking that extra lengthy period of time and giving the opportunity to the Immigration Department to understand in detail the reason for the visit and allow them to go on to issue a visa to them over the normal period of stay that they're afforded when they arrive. So let's look through this. So generally, if you come to Hong Kong either as admitted at the border without a visa with a visa upon arrival, or if you have applied for and secured a visa in advance of arrival, permitted activity is you come for a genuine business visit or a genuine leisure visit. You're then expected to do what you're going to do, and then you leave. If you are coming subsequently, or you plan to come subsequently to work or to join in a business, it's okay to come as a visitor in advance of all of that activity and engage in sort of pre-relocation for business residence type activities. So you can look for apartments, you can make research into what it's like to get a mobile phone, you can do all of the things that are anticipatory of you subsequently becoming a resident, but you can't actually cross the threshold into that activity whilst you're here as a visitor visa holder. And as you can see here, participating in trade fairs and speaking at conferences is permitted activity unless you're getting paid for it. And if you're getting paid for it, then you actually need an employment visa in advance of arrival. One point about trade fair participation is that you can set up your showroom and you can display your goods and you can represent the interests of your organization outside of Hong Kong, but you can't set up shop. You can't sell goods and merchandise across the counter, as it were, in any trade fair scenario. So the visitor visa does not permit that type of activity. So if you are here as a visitor and you have the intention to stay here longer, more than likely to join in a business or to establish a business or to take up employment, at the point where your intention to reside has crystallized, the visitor visa is no longer appropriate. And at that point, you need to think about your longer-term objectives for Hong Kong and think about making the application to the Immigration Department for a visa so that you can actually be admitted to Hong Kong to engage in that kind of activity which is permitted under those visa classes. And it's quite important when you're advising clients about this because there is this general ethos that runs writ large throughout the foreign national community in Hong Kong that somehow Hong Kong immigration is really easy because you get all this time when you present yourself at the border on arrival and that the immigration officers smile at you as they admit you and they usually don't ask you any questions, and it can't be such a big problem anyway, can it? But of course, you know, the reality is somewhat different. So it's important that you advise to your clients exactly what is permitted activity as a visitor. And as I say, if the intention to reside is crystallized and other things are planned, you need to advise them not to inadvertently breach their conditions of stay.
Sorry,
Yeah.
What will the intention to reside? What kind of evidence? Or things that you do?
It's all in here. It's all in here. Because everybody has a different set of circumstances in their life, but there's one thing that generally presents itself is, have I come to visit or have I come to live?
So when immigration department say prosecute you for, in fact, doing things like, so what kind of evidence they prove that you have this kind of intention?
Well, no, they're not trying to prove you've got this kind of intention. They're proving what you've done that's in breach of your conditions of stay. Yeah? Okay. Great. Good. Okay. But ultimately, it's the immigration department that decide, and it's a great point that was just raised, because if they challenge you, they will assess your actions and your intentions. And prosecution, removal, or cancellation of visitor visa permissions is all possible. And one tool that the immigration department do use, particularly at the border if we have frequent visitors, and the immigration officer, during the currency of establishing the bona fides of that individual as a visitor, if he's not in a position to truly assess what might be going on and he suspects the intentions and the actions of this frequent visitor to Hong Kong, what he could do is grant a short conditional landing. And normally what that means is if you get a 90-day limit of stay or a 180-day limit of stay, you can expect the immigration officer potentially just saying, look, I think I'm going to give you just a 3-day limit of stay, I'm going to give you a 7-day limit of stay. And at that point, all bets are off because you can't get that extended and you have to make an exit from Hong Kong. If you then subsequently try and present yourself as a visitor within the next 12 months, you will be refused entry. So the only way that you can disabuse yourself of a short conditional landing is to go on to make an application for a residence visa subsequently on an entry visa basis, that is before you arrive, and then allow the immigration department to take a view as to what it is that's keeping you here, and if they grant you the residence visa, then all the constraints associated with a short conditional landing as a visitor will be lifted, so you'll be able to arrive readily and easily on your new residence visa permissions. So it's important you understand that, because the foreigners tend to think that it's not a big deal, and they get very, very surprised when all of a sudden they've been dropped with an SCL endorsed in their passport. Yes, would you like to ask a question?
What is your experience in terms of the number of months that visitors tend to stay in Hong Kong before the immigration says, oh, you've been here a bit too long, what are you doing here?
Yeah, normally my rule of thumb is if you spend more than 180 days in any 12-month given period, then the algorithm that the immigration department apply in terms of the systems that puts the examining officer on notice that he might want to ask the next level of questions will effectively kick in. Now, whether the immigration officers practically do that with every 180-day limit of 180 days in a 1 year given period just depends on the officer and probably how busy they are and what they think about the person that's in front of them. But after 180 days over that 1 year period, it tends to get a little bit sticky. But there's anecdotal evidence of especially British nationals that have been here for a dozen years, coming and going as visitors, and they've never encountered any problems. But of course, that doesn't remove the sword of Damocles that hangs over your head each time you present yourself. So I don't think it's a sustainable way of maintaining your residence in Hong Kong.